Well, here in central London, police have arrested a number of people taking part in a protest in support of the group Palestine Action, which has been banned as a terrorist organisation. The organisers rejected calls to postpone the event because of the synagogue attack in Manchester. Tom Simons has this report.
In central London, 1,500 police officers are on the streets to arrest possibly as many as 1,500 campaigners who plan to break the law by supporting the banned group Palestine Action. The group has ignored pleas to delay its protest as Jewish people in Manchester mourn the victims of an attack which senior figures at the synagogue said would change the community forever. Last night, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, visiting a London synagogue, said he'd asked the organisers of the protest to exercise what he called common sense and decency and call it off. The organisers refused. The protest makes it harder to find enough officers to back up the security guards who protect synagogues in London. Around 350 will be needed through this weekend and the significant anniversary of the Hamas attacks on the 7th of October. In Manchester, there are also planned pro-Palestine protests, and the police have similar concerns.
Well, we do think, and I personally think, people should consider whether it's appropriate to protest at this time. We should be thinking about those people that lost their lives there on Thursday, and I think people need to consider what is appropriate. If people do use their right to protest, we've got the resources to manage it effectively. We'll engage with those protesters and we'll make sure that disruption is kept to a minimum.
But the group behind the protests, Defend Our Juries, condemned the attack in Manchester. It is adamant its campaign is about the ban on Palestine Action, not the Jewish community. Tom Simons, BBC News.
Well, my colleague Nikki Schiller has been at Trafalgar Square in central London where those protests have been taking place. So, Nikki, just bring us up to date with the situation on the ground.
Yes, Kasia. Well, the protest here in Trafalgar Square has now been going on for more than 4 hours. People sitting, many of them in silence, inside Trafalgar Square. And the police have been arresting them for supporting the banned organisation Palestine Action. And behind me you can see the massive police operation that is still going on. We have officers ready to go into the square and pick people up off the ground. They then bring them out here and you can see the vans are all lined up, and what happens is the protesters are brought here and then put into vans, and every 15 minutes or so we'll see a van go away. You can probably see some of the officers here going through some of the possessions of some of the people who've been arrested. Now, this has been going on all day. The Met Police have given us some updated numbers. They say that more than 175 people have been arrested so far today. They also say that 70% of public order policing has had to be diverted to this Defend Our Juries protest. As Tom Simons mentioned in his report, that's 1,500 officers. In total across the capital, 2,200 officers policing things like football matches, but also that extra security at synagogues. They've also had to draft in 400 officers from other forces, and you can see now what's happened. A group, normally there's about between 5 and 10 officers, will go up to one of the protesters, explain to them that they are breaking the law because Palestine Action is a proscribed terrorist organisation. That was done back in July by the then Home Secretary Yvette Cooper. Now, some of the protesters are then walking with the police and they are brought to this area. Others are not walking and they are being brought out, actually having to be physically brought out. And I have to say, it has been peaceful here today during this protest. And as was mentioned in Tom Simons' report, the Met Police Chief had urged the organisers not to go ahead with this protest in the wake of the synagogue attack in Manchester on Thursday. I've been talking to some of the people who've been taking part today, and they say they stand in solidarity with the Jewish community in Manchester, but this is about something different. They want the ban on Palestine Action lifted, and they say they had to come here to protest, and the organisation Defend the Juries, who are behind this, Hamas, said if they had called it off, they felt that that would have meant that terror had won, which is why they went ahead with it and didn't postpone it to another week, which is what some people had suggested. But there are still dozens of people sitting inside Trafalgar Square now holding those placards. Many of them are handwritten and they are being brought out. As I said, in the last hour we saw a flurry of protesters being arrested. It has calmed down a little bit in the last half an hour or so, but certainly, Kasia, as you can see on the pictures at the moment, the police are still arresting people, and the vans that you can see lined up here, then taking them away from the scene, and they will be processed in police stations across London. But I think certainly it's going to be at least another hour, maybe another couple of hours, while they process the rest of the people and the officers moving in as we speak to probably arrest more protesters here in Trafalgar Square, Kasia.
And Nikki, as we watch the police officers there walking up behind you, just when it comes to the protesters, they come with blank pieces of paper and then they write the words on them while they're there.
That is right. So it was around 1 o'clock when most of the people arrived, and it wasn't one of those situations where you often see people come carrying banners. What was happening is they were unfolding pieces of paper and card, and then with black marker pens writing the words that meant that they would get arrested, that they support Palestine Action, which, as I've said, is a proscribed terrorist organisation now. That is why the police go in and arrest them, because they are seen as supporting a terrorist organisation. Many of these people, a lot of elderly people here. I also saw vicars who were here as well, and people in mobility scooters were being taken off. Definitely it felt like there were more older people here, and it's been explained to me that, of course, a lot of older people are prepared to be arrested because they are no longer in a job. So if they did, after they've been processed, get a criminal record, then it wouldn't matter as much to them as if it was a younger person who then got a criminal record and, say, in the future couldn't get a job. But as you said, Kasia, they were handwriting these signs and placards on pieces of paper and card that they'd brought into the square. And interestingly, there's a big operation here. People have been going around with biscuits and sweets to give to the protesters. I saw many of them just sitting there with their eyes closed. It's been quite a silent protest. Often at these protests there's a lot of noise. That wasn't the case today. Lots of people just sitting in silence in Trafalgar Square.
Nikki, as always, many thanks there. Nikki Schiller, my colleague, joining us from Trafalgar Square, where those protests indeed still taking place. Now, I just want to go back to the situation in Gaza. Of course, our understanding is that Donald Trump is pushing forward this proposed 20-point peace plan, and we're imminently waiting at what stage it is, because, of course, there are a lot of negotiations to be had. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are on their way to Egypt for the next chapter of those negotiations.